Now let's talk about the nitty-gritties of the system, which is permissions. So when you have a document and you want to share it with other people, so you'll have a user ID of the person you're sharing the document with. You yourself have a user ID. So this is person us. This is the person who we are sharing the document with. So that is a friend. And you have user ID 123. Our friend has a user ID of 124. So how do we share this document with them? Let's say the document has a document ID 1. In our database, we have a key value pair. So in this value, we have all metadata of the document and the document contents. But we cannot store the permissions of a document in the same table. The reason I'm not storing them in the same table is because most likely what's going to happen is the permissions are going to be handled by a separate service. So in our normal system, when we have a client talking to our gateway, and there's a lot of stuff which actually makes the infrastructure of the system. So you have a service registry and the stuff that we talked about in our Gmail architecture video. Heartbeats, SMS services, all that stuff exists. But the core system is that you go to the gateway and it sends it to a document service. Okay, so here's where the read and the writes of the document happen. Creation, deletion, everything. But when you need permission, if you ask the document service to figure out who is permitted to view this document, that's a lot of pressure being put on the document service. That's a lot of coupling that has been added in terms of logic of serving documents versus looking at permissions. Instead, we can have a service called a permission manager. What this does is it looks at every user request and then decides whether this request is valid or not. So if a user 123 tries to write to a document that they don't have permission to, then the permission manager is going to fail that request and return them, let's say, a 401 unauthorized response. Okay, and you might have the permission manager being as complex as required depending on what kind of features you want to provide to users. So for example, if I share a document, like we said, document number 1, and I want to link share it. So anybody with the link can actually view or edit the document. This is the most easy way of doing things, because then the permission manager needs to have some sort of a mapping that document ID 1 is open to all. The reason being that if you are sharing the link with a person, then any external person with the link might send you the request. And this request has to be accepted. So that's an easy permission to handle. The other permission which is very easy to handle is where nobody is allowed to do anything. Okay, so only a few people have read or write access. So in our case, let's say user ID 123, which is us. Only we are going to be using this document. So it's a private document and we are the owner. Nobody else has permission on this document. So document ID 123 is the owner. And if you're going to use a NoSQL database here, which is probably sensible, you will have the key value pair here and the end of the JSON data. When the permission manager looks at this, it says only 123 is actually allowed to access this document. Anybody else trying to access this document will have a field request of 403. Or it can actually send a 404 also, because if you want to have a clever hack, if you want to see whether this document exists, whether there's an ID of this document type, then instead of sending a 401 saying that you don't have permission, one of the things that you can do is this resource does not exist for you. Okay, so that is a little bit of an engineering decision you have to make, and also a product decision. What kind of message do you want to show users? But whatever be the case, there will be an error to the user who does not have permission. Now let us say we want to add 124, specifically just 124 as a read permission guy. Okay, so initially what's going to happen is we need to send a request to the gateway that update permission. And in this request, we are going to be mentioning that add 124 as a viewer. So once that happens, the request is routed to the permission manager, which then makes an update in its database saying that for document ID 1, please make an update. Whatever permissions existed, just append this new permission of 124 having a read access. So that ends our column for permission. When this does happen, when 124 makes a request, it's going to go through to the permission manager, which is going to return the response that, okay, you have read access. All right. Now, if 124 then says that please, it sends another message saying that please write B at index in document ID 1, then all requests, like we said, are going to go through permission manager. It's going to see that, okay, document ID 1, you don't have permission to write, unfortunately, this request is going to fail. 401, you're not allowed to write in this document. What about link sharing, but only for reads? So anybody with the link, anybody who's sending a request has to be allowed to fetch the document, but they cannot edit the document. So in that case, we can write something like a regex expression sort of, where you say anybody, which is star, has access to read. Okay. Now 1 to 4 having an access to read is redundant, but let's keep that for a while. Star says read. So if any of the key value pairs satisfy the permission required for this user to make the operation that they're asking, then just return a yes response. Even if you want to create a document, just go to the permission manager. The permission manager is going to say, okay, you're allowed to create a document, and you go ahead and add that to the document service database. We can decouple the gateway from the document service completely. Like, we can remove all communication here and scale this service independently and scale the document service independently. That's a benefit of a microservice architecture.